Michael, yes. I know you're trying to bring people, I know. I want to welcome you guys. I think I know most everyone. Stephen, you are some executives here at the theater now. And Cliff was my really great friend and mentor. I'm glad that you all are here to celebrate him. Please find a comfy chair. You're going to get tired because I'm going to talk a long time. I'm going to be really brief. That's right. I'm going to be brief, but I know we've got some folks that have some stuff they would like to say as well. I want to say we love our beautiful building here. We know that none of this would have been possible without Cliff making this happen from the very beginning, and so we owe him a lot. I personally, he taught me how to direct, and actually, I would say forced me to direct. When I had done several shows and was learning all kinds of things from him, really great things about how to be an actor and how to be on stage and how to do things. And I had done several shows, and he was about to direct The Women, which was a cast of 30 women, and he said, hey, come be my assistant director on this. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. I've not directed anything. And he's like, I need another man in the room. I can't be in the room. I'm 30 women by myself. And I was like, okay, well, I will just come and sit there again. And so I would sit there, and then he would be like, hey, go take this scene in the lobby and run it with them, and have them, do some stuff. And so I would go out there and we would run it, and I would tell them something, I'd be like, hey, why don't you try this or do this? That'd be really funny. And we would come back in, and they would run it for him, and he'd be like, what is that? What are you doing? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really messing this up. I'm going to get in all kinds of trouble. And they were like, Steve said to do it. And he goes, I love it. It's great. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then shortly after that, they decided they were going to have a children's theater program. And he called me up again and said, hey, we're going to start this children's theater program. And this lady is going to come and direct the first two these children's shows that are participatory, and you're going to be her assistant director, and then you're going to take over that program. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I am teaching, and I don't know if I really even have any interest in children's theater. And I did it because he told me to do it, and so I said, okay. And all of you that know Cliff know that it was not easy to say no to that man. And so I did it. I had a great time. They turned the program over to me. I did it for 7 years and ended up writing 20 original shows because the first one, when I tried to find one, I didn't like the material, and I was like, I really want to do a Wizard of Oz, but they're all really, really bad or not enough like the movie to make me happy. And he was like, well, there's plenty of them out there. You can find one. And I was like, well, I'm sure I could write one better than the crap I've been reading. And so he said, okay, write one. And I was like, no, I'm kidding. It was a joke. And he was like, no, now you need to write one. So that kind of started as well. As I was teaching, he was so great to let me borrow things, to let us use all of the theater armies and supplies. And between him and Persis Forrester, being in shows with them, mentoring me, coming to shows and saying, this part of the show is really good. You really messed up on this part. You should have done this or fixed that or don't do that ever again. It was great. It was great teaching, and I learned a lot from them. But I really think, I would say probably the best part of what I learned from Cliff really had nothing to do with theater. And that had to do with who he was as a person. I met him before I met him at the theater. I worked at a grooming salon, a pet shop, Carol's Pet Center. And Cliff came in. I was a very young, naive, 16-year-old boy. shows up with this big giant Afghan that was gorgeous, and a matching fur coat to the And I'm pretty sure it was like September. You know, it was not cold enough yet to have on a fur coat, but he did. And he comes in with it, and he's like, "Hello, I'm here. You please groom my dog." And I was like, "I think I just met my first gay person." I'm not sure, because I don't know for sure, but I think this is what they call the homosexual.
And it was exciting.
Yeah, and I was like, I am so fascinated. Why do I want to talk to him? He was super sweet. He invited the groomer. There was a friend that worked there that actually groomed the dogs. I worked in the front. Named Gary, and he would always tip Gary by giving him tickets to whatever theater Arlington was doing. So I would go and see the shows. And so I was just fascinated by this person who was so free to be himself. He just wasn't himself. And it was so interesting and fascinating. And then, I got to know him doing shows, and he started saying, "Hey, I've got this really cool play that I'm going to go see over in Dallas that Kyle McLaren directed, and you just have to see it." And I'm like, I'll try and go. "No, you're going with me. We're going to go." So he put the fur coat on. We got it. I put my little suit on, going to the theater. We got in a convertible, and we're going to I had hair then. It was going everywhere because I'd not been in a convertible before. And I was 18 at this point. I was older, and we went. I think it was a 19 or 20, and we go see the show. And then after the show, he's like, "There's this great party at Casper. We're going to go to this cast party for one of my friend's birthdays." And I was like, "Oh," and I had ridden to Dallas or to Addison from Arlington in his vehicle. And I was like, "Oh, I think I have to go home." He's like, "We're just going to stop in. It'll be just for a minute." And I'm like, "Okay." And so we go to this big apartment complex that looked a little like a place I had not been before. Maybe not in the best part of town. And we go up these stairs, and he opens the door to the party where there's all this really loud, kind of obnoxious music. We open the door, and in the living room, there's no furniture in the living room space. In the center of the living room, there's a light shining down on all these big, like very thick pieces of plastic, like kind of like you think like when you would go into a refrigerator room, those thick kind of plastic stuff, in strips. Very clear plastic in a big circle, and in the middle of the circle was a man dancing in, not go-go kind of dancing, but very little clothing and all kinds of paint and weird stuff on his body, just kind of gyrating, not anything that was like, "Oh, that's a go-go boy, how fun." I was like, "What is that?" Where are we right now? And there was like maybe 2 or 3 other people in that room. And I could hear lots of other people, but I was like, "Oh my God, this is the entrance to this party, is this man in some plastic strips dancing around." And we go inside, and there were lots of people, and there was lots of fun, and there was, all kinds of stuff going on, and there were people drinking, and I'm sure doing other things that were probably illegal at the time. But I didn't really understand for sure because I'd not been around that stuff very much. And I'm kind of looking around, and a little bit later, I'm standing over in the corner, and they've got me a drink, and everyone's getting really loud and crazy. And we're there about a half an hour, and I'm like, "I've got to go home." I'm like, "Why am I here at this party?" There's a knock on the door, and I'm standing in the corner next to a window. The door opens, and there are some police officers. And I was this close to jumping out the window. We were on the second floor, and I was like, I don't know what everyone else here is doing, but I know we're all going to get in trouble. And they just said, "Y'all need to keep it down." Cliff went over and kind of chatted with them for a while. Went out in the hall with them and chatted for a while, and I'm like, "Did they take him?" I'm like, "Am I now stuck here?" And we stayed for a very long time, as I remember it. and did finally go home, and he was like, "Wasn't that great? Wasn't that so much fun?" And I was like, "Very interesting." And so there were many adventures like that, but that's the one I think of the most. So it was really fun. He exposed me to lots of great, fun people. He also one time took me to a party that was all the city council people in Dallas, and a bunch of really wild, wealthy people. And every time I'd be like, I don't know if I can go there. I don't know if we should go see these people. I don't know anybody. I feel uncomfortable. It's like, they're gonna love you. I love you. Why wouldn't they love you? What's not to love? They'll love you. Did you hear him saying it? They're gonna love you. Okay, and then you just would take a breath and go, and I was always, it always ended up being fine and fun and interesting. But that part of it, the fact that he just would go anywhere, could talk to anybody, was friends with everybody, and everybody loved him, and that he was always just unapologetically him, was something to strive for. It's still something, we were talking about insecurities. It's something that I'm not always still great at, but it was a great lesson for him to teach all of us. And I think that probably, I will never be able to thank him for my career as a teacher, for my career as a director and all that, but for giving me the ability to like myself when I wasn't sure that was going to be possible. I'm eternally grateful for him. So, I know there's lots of other folks that would like to talk about him. Catherine Johnson, would you like to come in?
On a rainy day in December 1971, I was in Denton on the North Texas campus. And the friend I was with suggested that we walk through the drama building so we could see if any of our friends from the last semester were there. And so we ended up in the studio theater, and it was there that I met Cliff Red and his then partner, Danny Adler. They were rehearsing a Renaissance comedy of manners complete with farthingales. But there were no skirts. It was just, I'm sure it was coat hangers. They wrapped ribbon around so you could see their legs and all of that. And Cliff was up there directing leg and pelvic nastiness under those clothes. And that day marked the beginning of two endearing friendships. I was singing at the Southern Palace at Six Flags that year, and when the park closed at Thanksgiving, I needed to find a job. Well, Providence prevailed, and Danny called out of the blue, and he asked if I would come to work with them at Leonard's. This was before it became Dillard's. Leonard's was not exactly a high-end retailer. The three of us stacked color tile, gallons of paint, draped mannequins in the fabric department, and our favorite, we did that annual setup for Susan Houston's charm school. We displayed lawnmowers. We displayed grills. It wasn't the most glamorous of work, but I made $1.90 an hour. And we had the best time. There was an old jukebox in our workroom, and we listened to the hits of the 90s, the 70s in our clogs. We all wore wooden clogs. And the racket of those wooden shoes echoed through the air as we marched and sometimes danced down the aisles to our next project. It was somewhere during that period that Cliff began to toy with the idea of forming a theater in Arlington. Moss Hart's Light Up the Sky was the inaugural production, and it was a beautiful and glamorous show. At that point, we did shows in vacant storefronts at Forum 303 and in motel conference rooms on Division Street. Oh. Cliff's persistence and confidence were legendary, and the result was decades of shows in multiple locations. His ability to raise money was staggering. He never met a stranger, and he could literally squeeze blood out of a turnip. He was bigger than life, and he was my friend. I visited with Cliff and Gil in Natchez 3 years ago, and we had such a wonderful time. It was low-key, we walked the levees, we had coffee, we cooked, and we had drinks. And it was just a few casual days with these good friends that will live in my memory forever. Max was his most important creation. And the love he had for his son was fierce and all-consuming. Our hearts go out to Max and his family, and especially to Gil. We owe heartfelt thanks to his husband, Gil, who cared for him during the last years of his life. We will never be able to thank you sufficiently for the care you provided and for making the difficult decisions that no one is ever prepared to make. There are 3 things that stand out about our 54-year friendship. If he wanted something, he figured out a way to get it, and he got it. He lived his life without reproach, and in the 54 years that I knew him, he never had an ugly boyfriend. So here we are, surrounded by the culmination of a dream, formed in a dirty workroom at Dillard's department store, listening to Gloria Gaynor and Minnie Riperton on an old jukebox. Cliff's spirit will always surround us in this building, ever present, and I hope proud of the dream he helped to build. His soul will always be with us in this building. And I hope Theater Arlington can find a way to pay tribute to the gifts he gave to this theater and to the city of Arlington. In those days when we would take a break and sit in that dirty workroom, you know, we would sometimes, because we were so dramatic. It was our Sabbath days. We were so creative, and anything that we could do. Of course, we were under the dreadful influence of Kyle McLaren. The drama never stopped. But we used to do like little dramatic interpretations. And one of my favorite things that we used to talk about was a quatrain from Romeo and Juliet. And when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will pay no interest to the garish sun. Good night, sweetheart. Perfect.
Good singer.
You can do it right here in the front.
Okay. Oh,
Or you can do it right there at your chair if you want to.
okay, I think I'll do it right at my chair. Well, Catherine said everything I wanted. I only knew Cliff for 52 years. I came along, 2 years after she did. But we were still doing things in Dillard's from time to time. And that's when I met Cahill. I mean George. I couldn't get it right, Jorge, and so I paged him over the intercom as Hey-Ho, and he's been Hey-Ho to me. Just call him. Anyway, Cliff has already won one argument that we had. I said, I want to go first, so I don't have to go to memorials. Well, he won, if you can call that winning, because he went through so much misery. I can't bring myself to erase the last text message I had from him. I said, are you still in the hospital? He said, no, home, been miserable. So it's so great to think about him being not miserable. And we thank you, Gil, oh so very much, for taking care of him. You gave up part of your life to do that. And we love you for it. I want to tell you a little story. It's a really short story about my mother, Doris Ford, loved to go play bingo. So on a Friday night, Danny, Cliff, and I would go with Doris Ford to play bingo. And so it it was so funny, because she would buy us all bingo cards and those dabbers, you know, to work with. And when we got in there, they got into the spirit of what was happening, and they would go, B7, B7. They didn't say B7, they said B7, B7, because it was at the VFW home, you know. And so we have those wonderful memories, and I cherish them, and I'll always think of him as my very good friend. I love you, David. Thank you so much.
I'm used today because now we would get in trouble for it. But I will if it's in the theater. So keep your stories friendlier than the things that he always said. So we all know, and we can whisper into each other later and laugh because they were great. I know you're dying to know. Do you want Jean? After Jean goes, I'm going to let folks kind of just get up and go, and we'll Max and we'll let you wrap things up, please.
Cliff and I's friendship began 50 years ago, exactly. I was working at a record store, and somebody came in and said they were doing a production, would you like to help? And I showed up, and I ended up doing the sound for Picnic, and it was the Lamplighter Inn on Division.
Yes!
First time. And a few months later, Cliff passed in Private Lives, and we took Private Lives on the road. We went to Carswell Air Force Base, we went to the Country Club, and we actually performed it twice at those places, and once at the Odd Fellows Inn in Arlington.
The BPOE, yeah.
Yep.
We did that.
And now, a lot of people don't know, but that production raised about $1,700 in 1975. And that was the seed money for Theater Arlington to go forward. And eventually there was a theater and all of that. But Cliff and I were unlikely best friends. I'm a former active duty Marine. I come from a military family. I went sports. I went to that. And Cliff was Cliff. An openly gay man in 1975 and unapologetic in the middle of Texas. And we started a friendship that spanned all those years. With Tony and Elliot and Tate and even sometimes BJ, we started a club called the Wednesday Boys Club. And for 6 years, we went every Wednesday and had lunch with the boys. And everybody in Arlington wanted to know, what are they talking about? And we said, not you. Our children grew up together. My daughters Erin and Lauren grew up with Max. And Max often said, Gene Flake was my male role model. Because my daughters would go with Cliff and they'd get fashion tips. So Max and I would look up guns and talk about the Marines and talk about sports and all that. And we had a great time. I moved in and out of Dallas quite a bit with jobs, but Cliff and I always remained friends. And we hadn't seen each other in a few months. It was just like we left and we came back. My daughters always said that Cliff and I were the perfect couple. You guys were alike, you get along, all that. And then in 2015, when the Supreme Court said that gay marriage was okay, I called him. I said, Cliff, we can get married. Now, it's going to be a sexless marriage because I'm hopelessly heterosexual and you're proud gay. But we can do it just to make our daughters happy. We can do that. And I'm sorry. I was honored to be the best man that he and Gil played. The love of his life, and who stood by him during his failing health. Cliff's greatest talent was making you feel like you were the only one in the room. And he did that. His other one was making a sexual entendre out of anything that you said.
Charlotte and Cliff, of course I want to be on stage. I don't have mine written out. I, last night, sat down with a pad and a pencil and thought, well, what about, let me say about Cliff. It was so much, it was so hard that I just put it all down, and I thought, I'm just gonna come, everybody here loved him, so everybody will be fine with what I share. He was a dear, dear friend to me. I knew Danny, I knew Charlotte, and I know Gil. So I know all the loves of his life. And Max. When this infant was born, he was the prince, truly. He carried this child around daily, everywhere. He adored. I say, and many of you know, I knew Charlotte, she was a dear friend. I was here not very long ago about that. And that breaks my heart for Max, both of his parents. But they loved him. And I do remember when Charlotte and Cliff got married, I buying her dresses, we were flying to Houston, getting ready the big wedding. And I remember saying to my friend Charlotte, what the hell, why are you going to marry? You just date him, okay? Just date him. It's not like you're gonna have any children. Wrong. And Cliff always wanted a child. So when he married Charlotte, they had Max. And then he got 3 stepchildren that he loved. He was a good dad to me and to Miss Kathleen and the Clark. He loved those children. So he was in heaven. He had a whole family. He always wanted a family. And he got that. And now, another love of his life was Gil. And I too spent time in Natchez with them. And it was a special trip. When Steve talked about him being so true to himself as a gay man, I remember the first time my mother met Cliff. She was from Wichita, Kansas. She never knew a gay person. She just didn't know a gay person. She knew Charlotte. So when she was coming down to Arlington, I said, where are you gonna meet Cliff? That's Charlotte's new love. And I said, and Mommy's gay. She said, oh, he's gay. Wichita, Kansas, older, never met gay. So she's like, oh, okay. We went to dinner. 5 minutes into dinner, in love with Cliff. What a beautiful gift it was to meet somebody that's so honest with their gayness. For my mother to have been introduced to the gay community by Cliff Lynn, that was a gift to her. He gave me support. I have a multiracial family. I have a beautiful, my oldest grandson, Charlotte and Cliff were the first people I told when my daughter was in college and got pregnant and get married by first. And so that was a shock. And then it was a bigger shock when the father was black. So who do I tell the first time? My most beautiful liberal friends in the whole wide world. That's perfect, right? Charlotte and Cliff. And I explained to them that, hey, I'm gonna be a grandma. And Charlotte said, oh, fabulous. And I said, yeah, there's one more thing. That mom is black. And she said, looked over at Cliff and he says, well, we're gonna have a hell of a baby shower. And we had a hell of a baby shower. You can imagine, all wound up. I miss him also. We all miss him. He's gone too soon. We'll all have a void in our hearts because Cliff Red's no longer here, but we all surely have magnificent memories. And we were given a huge gift in life to have him as our friend. And just a little tidbit, I'm only saying this because it leads to something else. I've written a book about my memoirs. And Cliff knew I was writing a book. We talked about it. He talked about it. And I always said, Charles, you were love of his life also. And, I know that it's a void for you guys. And I know, honey, with I know you have experienced something that at your age you should not. I get that. So I want all three of you to know, and our daughter, that I'm Aunt Patty always for you all. Call me anytime you want. Kathleen and I share a birthday. And Max, he refers to me as Aunt Patty, which is a huge, huge honor for me.
With him forever.
Thank you, baby. And your father loved you so much. Thank you all.
I want to piggyback on something Patty said about Max. I literally, when you were born, and then for maybe a year, I remember telling the two of them, mostly Cliff, though, he's not going to learn how to walk. No, I'm serious. I never saw you, okay, 2 months old, 3 months old, 4 months old, in the thing. You were never in one of those things either. You were, like you said, I'm gonna go start the spaghetti. But that's true. I think everybody gets the point, and we all know him, that he was bigger than life. People talk about people come into a room and they suck the air out of it. He blew more air in there. As I told Gil, I said, Gil said, gee, I wish he had written his story, his own memoir, etc. I said, oh, he would have been great artist. One was what he would tell stories, and then whatever he did, he'd make up. That was Cliff. It was what was working at the time. I always felt that he had an anxiety about him that poo-poo was going to hit the fan, so he needed to overdo almost. And I used to say, chill out. Okay. So how did we meet? Actually, how we met, I was teaching at the University of Texas, Arlington, and I had a graduate student tell me they're doing a play, and Larry said, you need to go over there and do a play called, it's a Neil Simon play. Actually, it's a takeoff on Chekhov, and it's called The Good Doctor. And I went, Larry, I want to get back into theater. I'd done theater in New Orleans, I'd done theater in Baton Rouge. And I said, it takes a lot of time. He said, you'll love it. So I go there, and I don't know who's supposed to be the director, but it turned out to be Mike Drzazowski, if anybody remembers. Yeah. And he was doing guest directing. So I got cast, and turns out I got cast as the lead with 13 scenes as the good doctor. I mean, not that I hadn't done it, but this is ridiculous. Okay, so I'm the lead. So I don't meet Danny or Cliff until the cast party for the play. So I didn't meet him. He didn't direct. I didn't know who this guy was. And he comes into the party, the cast party at somebody's house, and we're doing all this, and I have to these little apartments, etc. And met him. So so I'm now a member of the theater. And in those days, a guy named Ray Pearson, who was an attorney in town, was really one of the reasons that we had a theater funded. I mean, I think he funded like or whatever. It was his money. So you gotta give credit to some people way back then. Is that my phone? Anyway, so he said there was a membership thing. Remember, you had to, if you were a cast member, you had to pay. You would join the thing, and it was $10 a year or something. I said, I'm doing this for nothing. So I'm going to a board meeting. Shirley Orr was there. Mike, what's his name? Our old buddy Mike, who smoked himself to death. That great actor. And anyway, yeah. And so what happens is, Cliff and Greg get together and say, because I opened my mouth and I said, there's a lot of stuff, guys, really, you need to talk to reporters, and you need to, I'm giving all these things as a board member now, or whatever we would call members. And of course, it was like, oh, that's not how it is. And so within a week, they called me and said, would you be president? President board. So I said, you guys are crazy. And I said, I would be on a stage if we're going to do anything. I don't want to be president. We can do both. Yeah, right. And so I became president. I purged the entire board. These were all actors, every one of them, who wanted this played for them, and this vanity for them. And I said, we need people who can raise money, insurance people, we need accountants, we need, people who have connections in town to get audiences in. And so, well, what about us? I said, you'll be the creative advisory board. So could we pick the plays? I said, well, there'll be a committee. So we did that. 20 years I did that. 20 years, yours truly raised, Clint, I gotta tell you the story real quick. So you know the Baptist church where we came from down on Division and Charlie Clausen came to me and said, there's that building that's for rent, or you can rent it, or you can buy it. So I go over there, and it's a church, abandoned Baptist church with a Baptist green and everything. So Cliff, I bring him over there, and he goes, I want this. And then we're in the parking lot, and he's like, would you get it? I mean, I did nothing in the side. And what did you say? Whatever we asked you to do, you do it. You've got to get this for me. Please, promise me. Right, and then it was like, and so I raised $25,000 lying to every banker in town for the down payment, signed myself on the note. I had a house note that was less than half of that, and I'm over here signing to a guy who was a personal loan for the guy that we could do that. Cliff, if we told stories as we sort of came close to it, we'd be the Epstein files. Just the stuff. He was bigger than life, and we would miss him, but we never forget him. He's here. He's here. He's never been gone. Really, true. And God bless you for taking care of this man. Was it easy? Never easy. He had a lot of pain and a lot of end-of-life struggle. And, but he kept going, and he did find what was good for you and make you feel like you could do anything. Or he fantasied that you would because he told you to. So, God bless him.
Yes, indeed. I have a couple things to say. First off, Gil, and as most of y'all know, I'm a pretty tough dude, but I've noticed I'm not. So when you are 20 years old, your mother comes and tells you that you are not going to be the prince of the family anymore because dude shows up. You either take that with a grain of salt or you just take it and run. And I think I was pretty cool as a dude. And an older brother. Because he and Cliff were cool. And I'm home. I mean, not everybody walk around and go to your daughter, this is your uncle. And y'all are playing together. You know what I'm saying? That was pretty fun. And Cliff was a great stepmom. And the best part was that, as my sister would tell you, he was really good with dresses for her. time with you. From what I know of you, I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Kathleen, for those of you that don't know me. And when you talk about Cliff and adoring Matt, it was kind of a competition in our house, who adored him more. I was 13 years old when he was born, and I like to call him my little first baby. It's my first baby. I figured out how to be a parent with him. But Cliff came into my life when I was 12 years old. And those of you that knew me at that time, and those of you who didn't, you can imagine that I was a really great teenager. Real pleasant to be with. And I love you in spite of that. And to the day he died, he loved me. And he also came into our lives when we had a lot of chaos going on. And he was our caretaker. He took care of us and made sure I had dresses. And it was a birthday cake. It was your birthday. Or that you had a lunchbox to start school. So I'm very thankful that I had him in my life, and I don't know that he knows how thankful I am, especially after raising 2 kids. It's not easy. And I had 2 great boys. I never had a daughter. God knew I couldn't have done that. There couldn't have been 2 of us living in the same house. And I can't do my own hair, much less another girl's hair. That's why I have things. But he was a great stepdad. He called me his child, called my children his grandchildren. And I'm gonna miss him. I love him. I don't know what else to say. I spent a lot of time with my brother this year, a lot more time than we have recently, not for great circumstances, but at least we have each other. And I love you.
Well, first of all, I didn't realize it'd be as emotional as I am today. I thought, oh, we're going to bunch of laughs and clips of that. But realizing that all of your stories and all of your faces really are my life, and the stories that preceded me or were a part of me with my career and certainly my history with Theater Arlington. I just came from a couple of weeks ago. We had a 350 member family reunion of all the Islands, and you all know my family. And my cousin from South Bend, Indiana, who I've spoken to maybe twice in my life, he came up to me and he said, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes, Stevie, what is it?" And he said, "Well," he said, "What has it been like growing up in Texas and really kind of being the first out person in an island family of all of us?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, not as difficult as you may think or anything, because I said I was raised in the theater, and I've always been supported and been around people. And like Steve said, Cliff really, as young men, was that person that created a very safe space for us to know that it was okay to be who you were, to certainly say and do what you wanted to, and sort of be able to get away with it. And also, when I would watch him fundraise and speak and ask for money and go to all the Rotary clubs and all of that stuff, Cliff put on the Cliff show without trying to be a billboard. He was certainly bigger than he was a big man, and he was a big man, and his personality went, beyond the room. But he was himself and was able to get what we all needed by just being himself. And I think that's probably the best lesson, I learned from him, was not the theater stuff, because I come from a theater background before I started at Theater Arlington, and I certainly did learn a lot of things to do and a lot of things not to do. But the most important lesson I think I learned was Cliff is a people person. And there's only one other person that's as equal as him, but that would be the female counterpoint next to Rudy Lee. Who could give speeches and fill houses just with her personality. But it was Cliff's ability to work a room, whether it was the audience or whether it's just his office. I told W.C. Louise, and all of our Louise are Louise, right? We're all Louise. My first meeting of Cliff was at the party for working in 1983 at Cliff and Charlotte's, and Debbie and Cliff came in from the wildflower auction, and Cliff, of course, had bought everything at the auction and came in like any man on a bender into the room with all of these things. They were all gifts for Max, who had just been born, I believe, or was about to be born. And that's when I met everybody. It was my first show to see at Theater Arlington. I didn't know anybody, and you were lovely. But I met many of the faces in this room there, whether you were part of the cast or whether you were just part of the Theater Arlington family. But that's really what today is it's a family reunion. And I think that's what Cliff put together as a legacy of chosen family, as opposed to blood family, although we have blood family here. The way I started working at Theater Arlington was 1984. I did my first show in January of '84. First show I auditioned for Cliff, I didn't get cast. I was working for my dad. My dad was a banker, and I was working at Bedford National Bank in bookkeeping and as a drive-through teller while I was in college. And I left on my lunch hour and came and auditioned for The Lion in Winter to be your youngest son. And I had to go during my lunch hour, and the only person I had to read with was Judy Raiders. I guess she outshone me because I didn't get the part. But I went away for the Christmas holidays, and while I was gone for the Christmas holidays, when I came back, this is before cell phones and computers and everything, my mother said, Theater Arlington called, and you've already missed like 5 rehearsals for their playing our song. And I'm like, I didn't audition for their playing our song. But Cliff had cast me in the next show, and I literally left she picked me up at the airport and drove me home. I dropped my suitcase. I called Theater Arlington. Judy Raiders was in her office. This is on a Sunday. She picked up the phone. She said, yeah, get up here. And I left North Fort Worth, and I came straight to the Division Street Playhouse and walked right into rehearsal. And thus it began. Then I did the Fantastics that spring. And then that summer, I was in Los Angeles doing the Facts of Life for CTV, and got a call that my mother and dad my dad was going to probably lose his job, and my mother and dad were going to lose the house. And the choice was stay in Los Angeles and try to get more work with Lisa Welchel, who was on the Facts of Life, and kind of ride her coattails, or come back here and try to stand on my own 2 feet and not become involved, but try to get it out from underneath my mother and dad so that if something bad happened, I was at least independent enough to kind of keep going. And that's what I did. And the week I came back, I get a call from Cliff. And he goes, hello, sweetheart, And I said, hi, Cliff. And he was like, listen, we're gonna hire another person. We need an administrative assistant. Would you like to come work with Judy and I at the theater? Well, it was a gift that I got that call, and of course I said yes. I didn't ask how much. I didn't ask how many hours. But I just took it because it was theater. It was Theater Arlington. It was a new theater for me. And I said, when do you want me to start? I need to give notice and thank you. He goes, well, can you start Monday? And this was probably like a Wednesday or something. And I said, well, I'll need to talk to him at the bank, but probably. And I didn't go talk to my dad, who was president. I went and talked to the vice president. And he said, I think you need to take the job. And I did. I started the next Monday, and my dad lost his job like a week and a half later. So not only was it serendipitous, it was a gift to sort of propel my career. My first day of work at Theater Arlington under Cliff and next to Judy in that little cinder block office under Vision Davis, my first day of work was when the shit had hit the fan because Doug Farrer's acting studio had produced the all-male version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And it had made national headlines.
Whoa.
And I was told, don't talk to the press. And I also wore all purple, which was G. Rader's least favorite color. And she let me know it. And so it was trial by fire. Dealing with that and juggling that and trying to get calls to Cliff. First day at work, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Cliff and Judy, both, when Cliff would let Judy direct the studio shows, they both had, George would trace out or draw out stage plans, floor plans, and they had little chess pieces, and they would pre-block the shows. Lock me in the office, don't let me take any calls, I gotta block the show. They would block the show and get it all down in the script so that we were ready to go. Still to this day, I don't have chess pieces, but I've got to lock myself in or make a big pot of coffee and sit at the table and block the show out. I grew up in doing summer stock, where you only have 6-7 days to put a show together, and it's still like that at Casa. But because of their diligency of pre-blocking those shows, that is still my modus operandi as a director, is to go in prepared so that you can really lead it. Now, one of my bad stories about myself, not Cliff, but a lesson, actually involves Catherine. She'll kind of remember this. After several years of being at the theater and being a golden boy and being in about every other show, as we've all been at one point in our life, we were doing a musical review called Personals. Not a great show, but Theater 3 just did it, and Cliff saw a show at another theater who wanted to do it. So we were doing the musical Personals. Well, I went to see Personals at Theater 3 with Cliff. One night in rehearsal during our production of rehearsals, Catherine and I, he was talking about, oh, every time I've ever seen this musical, this is what they do. Oh, this is what they do. This is how you do this number and that. Well, I knew Cliff had only seen the musical once. And I called him on it. And the next day at work, he was still my boss. The next day at work, he hit the little intercom, which his desk was as far away from me. He hit the little intercom and said, hey, will you, PJ, would you come into my office? And I walked in and go shut the door. Which I either knew we were going to have a great gossip session or something was wrong. And something was wrong. And I sat down and he said, you and Catherine have got to back off. He said, you spoke back to me at rehearsal last night, and I'm the director, and I don't want to go back to rehearsal if y'all let me like that. And I was mortally wounded because I had upset Cliff. And learned a very valuable lesson that, yes, you listen to your director, yes, you trust your director. If you don't agree with them, you kind of keep your mouth shut, you end up doing what you want to anyway, and then they assume that that's what they told you to do. But I did, and I went to Catherine that night, and I went, we're in trouble, we gotta lay low, and we did. We had a great show, but it was a good, valuable lesson. Anyway, because of that, 1990 was when Cliff left Theater Arlington, and the rug was pulled out from underneath me because I had lost a friend, a boss, mentor, confidant, boyfriend, and was afraid that I was going to lose a lot of you. And for those of you that stuck with Theater Arlington, even in that time, thank you for sticking with Theater Arlington, keeping it going. None of us would be sitting here right now in this building if Cliff hadn't set that precedent and given us all of the cattle prod up our butts to put on a damn good show. And if we didn't, he threatened us with, I'm sorry, Steve, nipple clamps. Yeah. Sometimes. Colorful light. And now that we've gone through the Me Too movement, I just think, oh my Lord, how did we live through? But Cliff got away with anything because we loved him so very, very much. One of the last things that I got to do with Cliff, under his guidance before he left Peter Arlington is Peter Arlington was about to go into a capital campaign to raise money to move into what would eventually be this building. But at the time we were still looking, and Cliff and Judy and I, with flashlights, got to walk all over the Arlington Theater, which then became Johnny High Second Music Review, right here on Center Street, and we walked through that whole building with flashlights because there was no electricity in the building, and we're able to dream about moving Theater Arlington forward. This here lumber building is where I used to come buy all of our lumber and all of our tools and all of our paint. Long before Home Depot and all of those other places, I used to come right here. The checkout stands were right here. And I would pull that old, horrible Theater Arlington truck right up there and load everything to these front doors. So the fact that we're in this building really was a part of Theater Arlington history before we knew Theater Arlington was gonna be here. And Cliff, whenever my cars, and I drove terrible cars, as Kathleen will know, because I drove her everywhere. Whenever I didn't have a car, I got used that Theater Arlington truck, and I was proud to drive it. And I miss it, that big orange thing. But I want to thank you all for helping raise us, helping raise Theater Arlington, and just being that other family, that other chosen family that we were supported by and we were loved by. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, you mentioned Ray Pearson. I got a text from Paula at 12:30. We'll see you there. And I got a text just as I was arriving. Sorry, we're headed, but we can't be here. So there regrets. But anyway, my showbiz experience pales by comparison. I only knew Cliff for 43 years. So it was a short-lived thing compared to some of you. But nonetheless, I met Cliff at Charlotte's before they were married. Charlotte, we were at a party, I think maybe BP invited me, I don't know. And met Cliff, and I said, dang, this guy is really cool. And I've done a little bit of theater, but not much. I was mostly a singer starting at age 9 at the Texas Boys Choir. So I sort of, had the sing thing down a little bit, but not acting. And, but at this little party, Cliff said, we're gonna do Guys and Dolls at Theater Arlington, and that was in, I believe, the spring of '83, if I recall correctly. Yeah. And sorry, this guy and that gal and Dick Brown and maybe others. Yeah. So anyway, I auditioned. I wasn't sure I should be auditioning, but I did nonetheless. And I read for Sky Masterson, and Cliff said, okay, and we'd already done the singing auditions. Cliff said, okay, this is set in New York, so when you hear your New York accent, do that scene again, and let me hear your New York accent. It was the worst New York accent ever known to man or woman. And so I was embarrassed by it, but what can you do? Ask for it, so I did my best job. He cast me in the role, and I was just sure he got me confused, got the wrong or something. I later said to him, Cliff, you remember I'm the guy that couldn't do a New York accent, and he said, Tommy, I'm gonna give you may be the only Sky Masterson that ever had this backstory, but you're gonna be the Sky Masterson who came from Texas to me. So it worked. So one other quick thing, I'm an Arlington guy, grew up here, and that was my first exposure to Cliff. Then I moved to Austin. I worked as a staffer in the legislature and became a lobbyist and whatever. Well, one time I was at a party to raise purpose of the party was to raise some funds for this project. It was to be called the Long Center for the Performing Arts. Which never would have happened if any of you have not been and get a chance to go see the Long Center for Performing Arts in Austin, Texas. It's like nothing you've ever seen. Cliff had a hand in that, you might expect, but he was the guy that made that happen. He used that fundraising talent. It would not have happened if it had not been for Cliff. And I've forgotten how many, after you get above $1 billion, I can't count. I don't remember how much he raised, but.
It was multi-million.
Oh, hundreds, I think maybe 200 million.
It's 84 million.
80, okay. I like my version better, 200 million. Okay, 84 million. That was a lot of money in 2000.
2004,
Yeah.
It's still a lot of money.
Well, yeah, but it was a lot more money then. But Cliff did it, and I just ran into Cliff there. I said, "You're a hockey guy, yeah, me too." But anyway, I was living there, spent most of my adult life living in Austin, and Cliff, brought me in and said, "Okay, you're a lobbyist. Lobbyists know people with money, right? So you're gonna help me in this fundraiser." So I helped a little bit, not that much, much as I would have liked to, but just on a more personal note, my mother, she was an old Arlington. I don't think any of you are old enough. No, none of you are old enough to have known her. She'd be 88 if she was still with us. But my mother was in her final days, and Cliff and I had coffee at a little place. My mother had moved down and was living with me in Austin. And Cliff and I had coffee at a little place there by the Long Center, and I don't know how it came up, but I was saying I got to figure out something to get my mother for her birthday. I'm not sure she's going to have a lot more of them. And he said something a little later in the conversation about, well, we've got Mario Cantone is coming to do his stand-up. And I said, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord, because I hadn't followed it, didn't know about it. And my mother loved Mario Cantone. She watched him on the View and all that stuff, and just loved Mario Cantone. So I said, oh my God, this is great. He said, I'll handle it. We got tickets. She was in the wheelchair, front row. He didn't need to do that, but he did. That was Cliff, and he did say to me, well, this is different than the View. Mario Cantone, can be a little, at least R-rated, in his stand-up. And I said, that's okay. She loves me, doesn't matter. So he called me it was a matinee, maybe Saturday, Sunday, I don't remember. He called me right before the deal, and he said, I want you to bring your mother to the stage right door at intermission. And so I said, okay, what for? Never mind, just do it. Okay, yes, sir. So I did. I wheeled my mama up, and he said, they'll have your name. So I told him my name and wheeled her back. Cliff was standing in the hall out there, took us into Mario Cantone's dressing room, and my mom got to meet him, and he could not have been nicer. And the only person I think that might have been happier than my mother was Cliff, just looking with a smile on his face at what he made happen. And just on a personal level, that just touched me so much, and I think that illustrates what a lot of us are talking about when we talk about Cliff Red. God love you, Cliff. We miss you.
I've known here at Arlington. BT, I was taking some notes. There's 2 P's of nipple clamps, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I did my first show here at Theater Arlington in the spring or summer of 1990, and I met Cliff Red then. I did not have a personal relationship with Cliff. I never spent more than 5 minutes with Cliff Red, but he was a very engaging man. I've always liked and loved Cliff Red. That summer, I did a show called Isn't It Romantic? And long after that, we had the Stony Awards here at the old theater, and we had an after party at Cliff Red's house. And so I'm standing in the kitchen, and this is fall-ish of 1990, and I meet at that house the person who eventually is going to be my wife. 34 years, 1991, we got married, and so I am indebted to Cliff Red and the family of Cliff Red for bringing lots of happiness and great years into my life. Thanks.
And that's my husband, Michael Black, over there. And I worked at Art Grant Salon, and we did all the hair backstage and the makeup and everything. And Cliff kept going, Pam, you need to come and audition. You need to come and audition. Well, I didn't, and I was cutting his hair. And he says, now you're coming tomorrow, right? And I said, oh yeah, right, And so I did not come. At 8 o'clock the next morning, he said, and this was for Gypsy, which First Man was in, and I think Dawn was in. I saw her too, but there you are. Anyway, Tony, were you there, or that was just another show? Okay, anyway. So he ended up telling me, well then come and audition with Happy Birthday. So I came and I auditioned for Happy Birthday. I think he already had me precast anyway. I've never been on theater before on the stage, and it was really fun. I was Tori Adorable, a Hollywood blonde, and a dancer from Minsky's. And he let me wear the biggest plume that was out there, and we had to sing, oh, 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 oh. And he says, okay, now you have to sing it, because we were no talents. So that was really fun, getting to learn the silliness of all of that. It was really an incredible time, and one of the cast shows, which was at Beth Whipker's house, and her mom and my parents were really good friends, and Michael had gone to the show with somebody else, and he came over and he talked to me. I had like 4 guys around me, and he was gutsy enough to come up and ask me for my phone number, that he really wanted to go out. Oh, and I didn't say before, a couple of people kept on trying to set us up, and I wouldn't have a blind date, so he came up to me during the cast party and asked for my phone number, and I thought, this guy's so gutsy, I have to go out with him. So, anyway, it was really a great time, and I'm so happy that I got to be part of this group.
Of course you can, Danny.
Oh, Matt,
Kenny,
I'm sorry.
Kenny.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Well, you should go now.
You go.
Should-
You go.
And oh my God, Danny, it's so good to see you, honey.
Hey, it's good to see you, George. It's good to see you. George,
Sorry, I didn't recognize you. You look fabulous, baby.
Thank you. Not bad for 78.
Not bad for 82.
You had a good. First thing I want to say is, Gil, I'm looking forward to meeting you. I'm the Danny that you've heard about, people talking, for those of you who don't know. Cliff and I were partners for 13 years, and I was with Theater Arlington from, the very beginning. We were living in Arby, Leonard's, and we went to, Cliff heard about or read about a meeting of the Arlington Community Theater. It was having a meeting, so he wanted to go to find out about it. So we went, and I hope there's no one here from Arlington Community Theater back then. That was the most contentious group of people we had ever met. We both looked at each other and went, no thanks. But the great thing was, there was a young woman named Danielle Hibbert, who lived in Arlington, and she came up to Cliff as the meeting was breaking up and wanted to know about us. And Cliff said, well, I'm a director, and so Danielle said, well, please come to Arlington. We need a director for the community theater that we're starting. also have to give credit to is Percy Sam's mother, Big Percy. She was the person that really, the dream for their Arlington schools. And she did a show and needed to take some time, and so, and gave the money and everything that had been raised to the board of the theater, and they hired Cliff. But the first thing I want to say about Cliff is, Tony said this, the great thing about Cliff is he never let the facts get in the way of the great story. Oh my God, oh my God. So, Cliff was always full of surprises. He and I met at a summer thing at Eastfield College. The head of the department we had known I knew from Tarrant County Junior College. But anyway, Bob Dyer he was head of the department, and he wanted to do a summer program for people that weren't exposed to theater. So what we did was, we did theater in the park, in Dallas parks, and we did the Fantastics. And so we had this big gypsy-looking wagon that we took from park to park, and that was such fun. And so that's where Cliff and I met. And the point is, and I'm working so hard to keep this family friendly for those of you that know me well. But I was 23, and so I think it was third or fourth time that Cliff and I were in bed together, and something came up about age, and I said, "Well, Cliff, how old are you?" He said, 19. Oh my God, I almost had a coronary right there. I had visions of myself spending the rest of my life in prison. Since the legal age back then was, I guess, 21. So, and I thought, oh my God, Betty Red's gonna have me thrown. And she really wanted to, seriously.
She tried.
It was Cliff's dad that said, no, we're not going to do that. The other thing that was so funny is Cliff's family was so different from mine. His family had money. They were very social in Houston. And my family were from Hillsborough. For those of you that know Hillsborough, down south? North. Baptist, little Baptist, not Southern Baptist, but independent Baptist. So Cliff would, we were down there like at least once a month. Spent Easter and Christmas there.
Thanksgiving,
Catherine
remember
came
that
with us one year.
Thanksgiving? It was the first time I'd ever eaten on paper plates.
That was my family, and we had French fries, not French fries, French fries at every meal except breakfast. So my family did not know what to make of Cliff Red. He was so large in life. He was always talking about, country clubs and things like that. And so they were just, completely, just did not get involved.
They were adult.
They were what?
They were adult.
Oh, they were very, very, very. Cliff he was an amazing man. I'm glad that I had the years with him that I did. Again, I thank you. Max, when we were together, he always talked about, oh, I wish we could have kids, I wish we could have kids. And when you were born, I mean, you were all that he talked about, absolutely. And the other thing that he was always talking about was Theodore Arlington. I mean, Theodore Arlington would not exist, I don't believe, if it had not been for Cliff Ray. He had this vision of what he wanted it to be. He was the driving force behind it. Sitting here, so many memories. I mean, first show Light Up the Sky we did in an empty building downtown that the mayor, I think, arranged.
I thought it was some kind of auditorium.
Well,
Like
but that was
an
later.
event center or something.
Well,
Vanderbilt
that
Park.
was a journey to get there. His first two plays were here. Then that didn't work anymore, and we performed in schools. When we did Light Up the Sky, it was some kind of school, and with a room large enough for us to perform in. Rehearsals were also there. And it was a little first, second grade classroom. So all of the chairs were tiny. And the cast called them Keebler chairs. And there is I don't know what the line is from, but it is, we would have been a great fool not to have loved you. And for the cast took one of the little chairs, and they had a brass plaque made for the back of it, and it said, "We would have been a great stool not to have loved you." So much incredible talent. George, the sets he did were magic. I did costumes.
So your costumes were amazing.
Yes.
I would love it if I could get a list of all of the shows. I would like to count how many shows.
It's on the website.
When we did, company. I was telling Oscar, my husband, about this on the way over. But anything goes. But when we did company, I worked for Neiman Marcus for a long time, and I got a discount. So I would find special pieces that I liked, and that I wanted for costumes. And I got a discount, so I would buy them. Persis and there is a woman designer named Norma Kamali, very fashion forward, and she appeared on the scene when people knew her with a sweatshirt collection. Everything was out of sweatshirt material and threads, and it had huge shoulder pads, and this was kind of fitted, and it had a big ruffle, and then was it?
They were like harem
Yeah,
pants.
John-
They were harem pants.
Harem pants.
Because I had the outfit.
And that's what I cast, or that's what I put Persis in. She thought I had lost my mind. But I was telling Oscar about the shows that I love, costumes, and that was one of them. Okay, I have carried on enough. But again, Cliff was fabulous. Theodore Arlington was his birthday. And it's so wonderful to see all of these people here and the love that we have, even from Cliff's stepchildren and his cousin Faye. Oh my God. Cousin Faye, her husband used to do photographic safaris. And we loved hearing the stories about it.
You heard about that Norma Kamali. Two couples already have given Cliff credit for having met because of his, ear, Tilly, okay. Now, here's what happened. Cliff is moving into the house at Castle Rock. I go there on a Sunday. I'd had the worst date of my life the night before. I was single, obviously, newly divorced, etc. And so I look up on the counter and I see, at the balcony, and I see this pretty little girl. This is 41 years ago, and she's still pretty up there. And I said, Cliff, who is that? I said, I know her. And Cliff, in his inimitable way, downstairs says, oh, for God's sakes, don't you remember her? You loved her, you flirted with her at my party and she was wearing the Norma Kamali outfit. She had a Norma Kamali outfit. You saw that same outfit in company, which I was in. And so I go upstairs and I say to her, I'm so sorry, I forgot New York. She said, well, I remember you, etc. And I was so needy. I was so depressed and lonely. I asked her if I could give her a hug. She said yes. Then I said, can I give her another hug? And she said yes. And I looked at her, I said, are you married? She said, no. My God, I thought it was stealing a child. She looked so young. I'm 14 years older, you can tell. Anyway, no, it isn't 24, it's 14. Anyway, so I said, can I have another hug? She said yes. And I said, you married? No. You have a boyfriend? No. Well, what's wrong? I said, are you gay? She said, no. And I said, well, what's wrong with you? You have a disease? She said, no. We went out the following week, and 41 years later.
That's a lot of pressure now. Friends, I think what we have heard here is the gift that my father has kind of uniquely bestowed, which is the gift of community. There are relationships in here that transcend decades because of a connection made by one guy. The interesting thing about this is you could probably stack this room 40 times deep and still be able to make that claim.
Yes.
There were few people on planet Earth that were as loud, as charismatic, as completely full of electric energy as my dad. I'm one of those rare people who got to be really close with their parent. When you grow up as the child of a gay man, especially in the 90s, you kind of become a child of the community. I grew up in a way that I wouldn't trade for anything. My dad took me everywhere. There was never like a babysitter. Like if there was a board meeting, it was, and we're gonna have the board meeting and Max will be there. There was a performance and Max will be there. And I learned so much so young about how to just be around a wide swath of different kinds of people. And it made me a better person. I really do believe that. When you're Cliff's kid, there's not a lot of place to hide. Because he wants to tell everyone about everything that you have ever done in your entire life. All the time. So I kind of grew up in as much of the spotlight as he did because he always put me there, which was interesting, to say the least. And I'm not ever going to be my dad. No one ever will be. But I'm grateful for the pieces that he taught me. I'm grateful for the ability to talk to anyone about anything, for any reason, because it's a true gift. I wound up with many gifts from my father, but I think that's probably the best. One of the other things that's hard about being Cliff Red's kid is not just for you, but it's also for your spouse. So, because not just like is your business out there, but your wife's is too. And so it's a very special person that can be Cliff Red's daughter-in-law. That's a task, it's an ordeal. I think that the last few years with Dad, and you know, we went into this pandemic thing, and gosh, it was hard. But I tell you what, there is a man sitting in this room that made this transition easy, and that's that man right there. My dad loved you every bit as much as he could. And you were there for him in a time that was cataclysmically hard. And you did it with a smile on your face. And you did it with unending grace. And you did it when I couldn't. So Gil, you will always have a place in my family because you were so important to him. I really want to make sure that you know just how much you mean to this family. And I want to make sure that everyone in this room knows how much of an influence you had on Cliff Red. Because yeah, he was larger than life, but he was larger than life because you led him. He was larger than life because you gave him the fuel for the stories. Those stories aren't just Cliff, they were Cliff and you. You were there with him. He wouldn't have them if you weren't here. So thank you all for being part of his story. Thank you all for letting him be who he was and for never making him apologize for it, not that he Cliff Red isn't Cliff Red without every person in this room. So thank you for being part of that story. Thank you for being here today. I know that some of you may not have gotten to see him super much. My ever adoring wife put together a little slideshow of like what Dad's life has been over the last 10, 15 years. So if you haven't seen it or you want to look at it, pictures change every 10 seconds. As you're on your way out or as you're socializing or whatever, you can kind of see Dad being Grandpa Cliff and enjoying time with his grandkids in retirement and kind of that kind of chapter for his life that a lot of people didn't get to see. And I'm so glad that he got to do that.